Okay, we should be live. You checking the streams, Miller?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
It hasn't come through on Facebook yet.
And you guys are out of Alabama?
No, I'm in Pennsylvania and he's actually in Georgia.
Yeah, I'm in Georgia.
Okay. Well, that covers the East Coast pretty good.
Yeah, we got it covered from top to bottom. Okay, I see it on Facebook. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, Sheriff Mack, and all those who are tuning into the podcast live and all those who will watch it, the recorded version as well. And we have an honor to have Sheriff Richard Mack, and I'll talk a little bit about him. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the purpose for this program. You know, in this nation, especially over the last 12 months or so, there's been a lot of talk about the policing in America. Of course, we have the defund the police movement. We've had, a lot of talks about police brutality or whatever the case may be. And so I thought it was important for us to have a dialogue about that. You know, we always like to offer solutions and not just talk about a problem, but how do we resolve it? And so I was very much blessed in one of our conversations, a few weeks ago, we had Pastor Sean Moon, who was originally from, his family's from Korea. And so he talked about how the policing is there. And we were talking about some possible solutions. So now the name came up. You have to talk to Sheriff Mack. And so I said, well, let's see if we can reach out to him and get him on there. And the more I read and the more I heard what you're doing, I was just so blessed by it, because there are some really good, some easy not easy, I won't say they're easy solutions, but there's some very practical solutions and how we can resolve some of the issues. Being an African-American, I know historically how there have been challenges between Blacks and the police. And I even know now that at times it's a very tense situation for multiple reasons. But again, we're not going to talk about just talk about problems, but we want to talk about some very realistic solutions. And I want to get insight from our esteemed guest, Sheriff Mack. But let's talk a little bit, first of all, about the CSPOA. The CSPOA, which of course stands for the Constitutional, the Constitution Sheriffs and Police Officers Association. And it was, you're one of the founders, Sheriff Richard Mack. And I'm just reading some things from your website. Throughout America, law enforcement agencies have a slogan that defines the primary function of the agency. The slogan, which has been used for decades, yet which has been removed from the door of many police agency patrol vehicles, is to protect and serve, which is very interesting. We need to take a long, hard look at the meaning of this slogan and make sure that our individual and collective philosophy, as well as our individual attitude and behavior, reflects this worthy objection. Peace officers have a tougher job today than 20 years ago. Society seems to be polarized into two camps. One loves the police and the other hates us, he writes. It may be partially due to the fact that some peace officers and some training modules seem to foster the belief that we are somehow better than the people we serve. This can lead to a badge-heavy attitude and sometimes to the excessive use of force. This must not continue. We must eliminate any training or behavior that tarnishes the badge, including the code of silence. And I think that those are very important words that you have here on your website. Making its way to America, the sheriff held his office as the highest law enforcement officer within the county jurisdiction. And I did not know this. This was very interesting. This is very important considering that most peace officers are sworn officers who take oaths to support the state and the U.S. Constitution. The same oath being sworn by sheriff when constitutionally elected to office is significant in the fact that he or she is the first line of defense in preserving the constitutional rights of a citizen. The law enforcement powers held by the sheriff supersede those of any agent, officer, elected official, or employee from any level of government when in the jurisdiction of that county. The vertical separation of powers in the Constitution makes it clear that the power of the sheriff even supersedes the power of the president. And those are some strong words. And I don't disagree with you, but those are very strong words. And I think that our listeners should really understand what is being said on a local level. A lot of times we focus on federal more than local. And just a real quick, and I want to get you to chime in, Sheriff Mack. Just a real quick civics lesson for those of us who are watching it. You know, the Constitution states that we have certain inalienable rights. It also states that our government receives its just power through the consent of the governed. It is the states, the individual states coming together that actually give power or make up the United States of America. And so when we look at federal versus state level, and states' rights was a big deal, especially during the time of slavery and all those other things, state rights was a big part of the debate. But when we look at things from a local level, up instead of up down, I think that things work out good. And there are a lot of police officers who have this, who carry themselves in a way that seems as though they're in charge of every situation and they're public servants. The only thing that they're supposed to do is basically protect and serve. They serve us. And I always like to say, act like a referee. So if me and my neighbor has a problem, and say if his music's too loud or he's doing something, instead of me going over and confronting him and getting into a fist fight or something worse, I can call the police, and the police can come in and make peace between us and resolve the issue. But I think those are great words. Can you talk a little bit, Sheriff Mack, about that strong statement that you made? Again, I trust that it's true because I understand a little bit about the Constitution. But you say the vertical separation of powers in the Constitution makes it clear that the power of the sheriff even supersedes the power of the president.
Well, yes, thanks. Thanks to both of you, Miller and Joseph, for having me. I appreciate being on with you. First of all, I have to correct you. I used to be a civics teacher and American history teacher. You were actually quoting the Declaration of Independence just a minute ago.
Yes, you're right.
And I like the word unalienable. Our rights are unalienable. They cannot be leaned by government or anyone. They cannot be touched. And that's a key component of all of this. The Bill of Rights, I have always said, is a list of unalienable or untouchable rights. Government cannot touch the 28 principles as described within the Bill of Rights. Those were the supreme of the supreme laws ever promulgated by the United States government and primarily our founding fathers. And I really like something else you touched on, that the towards about the last fourth sentence in the Declaration of Independence, it says, these colonies are and have right to be free and independent states. The states are independent, and federalism, the division of power between the federal government and the states, is really key to all of this. And the states have acquiesced so they could take federal funding for everything and going along with political agendas. And I really agree with Abraham Lincoln that when he said, America will never be destroyed by an outside enemy. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it's because we destroyed ourselves. I think both parties are complicit in that. I don't think either party cares a damn about the American people or the Constitution or individual liberty. It's all about agendas and politics and money and greed and selfishness. And I am sick and tired of Washington, D.C. And so the easy solution there that you alluded to, the easy solution really is easy. The states have got to step up, and the sheriffs have got to step up and actually serve and protect. And so all of this, though, goes back to one thing that I did when I was sheriff in Southeast Arizona. All of this was born out of a lawsuit that I filed against the Clinton administration, and actually won a major landmark case at the United States Supreme Court, June 27, 1997. And so the 24-year anniversary is coming up on that. And there's some things that we have forgotten about in our history. And there is no way that a police officer can understand his role in protecting and serving the people when he doesn't even know what form of government we have. First of all, we're not a democracy, and telling people that we are is a lie, because democracy just says dictatorship as long as you have one more person than 50% on your side. It becomes a dictatorship, a democratic dictatorship. In a constitutional republic, the rights of the individual matter as much or more than the rights of the majority. And that's where we've forgotten. And if I could please give you a historical concept of that. because I know, and I still want to answer that one thing you said. I will, I promise, about the sheriff having more power than the president. I've said it and I've written books about it, and I'm not going to back up on that. But there is a little bit of an explanation where and when that happens. But I talk about this in my books, at least 2 different books. I always talk about it in my presentation, and that is the historical hero from December 1st, 1955, Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks. What a great lesson to us all if we would all just watch and learn from this wonderful lady who had the courage to stand against the law of the land, cultural norms that could have cost her life. What she did could have cost her life and maybe that of her family. But she refused to get to the back of the bus. And the real key component here is that 2 police officers sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution arrested her. And see, this is where I deviate. And this is where I say, what should have happened that day? We should have never heard of Rosa Parks, because we should have heard of the brave peace officers who, like you said, went there and were arbitrating the situation. They were the referee, and they should have told the bus driver, leave her alone. She's an American citizen. We were all created equal, or have you not read that part of the Declaration of Independence, bus driver? And leave her alone. She has a right to be left alone. And so then those 2 peace officers, and I would like to think that one would be a constitutional sheriff, escort her home safely and make sure that her husband has a gun in the home to defend himself and his family with. That is true American constitutional policing and a true constitutional sheriff. And not only that, but they give her and her family extra patrol through the night and through the coming days to make sure nobody's messing with them or burning a cross in their yard, or worse, beatings or lynchings. You see, we should have stopped that a long, long time ago. We should have stopped segregation. We should have stopped hate and prejudice and racism a long time ago. And our law enforcement community should have been a key component in all of that. And we look at not just Rosa Parks, who defied the law of the land and cultural norms, but wait, let's go back even a lot further. And let's look at Harriet Tubman. And I love that movie about her. But she defied the law. And should she have been arrested and hung, or should she have been honored to be placed on the $20 bill? And I want her on the $20 bill, because the one that's on there now was quite the racist himself. But it's another story for another time.
You're right.
Let's look at this. Should we not have police who know and understand the Constitution today? How are you going to protect rights? How are you going to defend freedom if you've never read the Constitution? How are you going to keep your oath that you swore in God's name to uphold and defend the Constitution, both of your state and of the federal government, the United States Constitution? How are you going to really do your job and understand your job if you've never read the document that you swore in solemn oath to uphold and defend? That would be impossible. And I do believe that de-escalation happens when officers understand patriotism and individual liberty and civil rights, and that it is our job to protect the God-given civil rights of every human being within our jurisdiction. That is the solution, and that is the answer. Now for the last question. I'm sorry I'm going too long here. About does the sheriff have more power than the president? Well, not at the federal level, he doesn't, and not in Washington, D.C. The president has his assignment, and the sheriff has his. And when the Brady Bill came out, it was the president of the United States trying to tell sheriffs and Congress, telling us that we had to enforce the Brady Bill for them for free without any negotiation. And I said, no, you have no authority to tell me what to do. The president of the United States, I don't care if it's George Washington, Obama, Biden, Trump, I don't care who you are. As president, you cannot tell me what to do. You cannot tell the sheriffs of this country how to do their job or what to do. You don't hire me. You cannot fire me. I do not answer to you. I answer to the people. This might be a new concept to you people in Washington, D.C. And I'm certainly not talking to you and Miller. I'm talking about the corrupt politicians of Washington, D.C. This might be a new notion for you. We, the people, are in charge of this government. They are the ones who elect you, and they are the ones who elect sheriffs. The sheriff does not work for a legislative body, and he certainly doesn't work for the president of the United States. He works for the people who appoint him in his or her county. That's why when the federal government comes to my county or any other sheriff's county, the sheriff is in charge and no one supersedes his authority. Why? Because he reports directly to the people of his county. He has no other boss. We, the people, bestow the power on the sheriff, and he has sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution for all of us in our county. No one you think some bureaucrat, FBI agent who doesn't even live there, comes in from Washington, D.C., supersedes the power and authority of the sheriff, who is there at the behest of we, the people? That could never be. I don't care if the courts even agree with the FBI having authority over us. They don't. And I can prove that they don't. But be that as it may, I took too long to answer your question, but I hope I answered it.
No, you're fine. And one of the things, and I thank you for the clarification in the beginning about the Bill of Rights versus the Constitution, because the Bill of Rights is so important for us. It's what's listed in the Bill of Rights that actually empowers us to empower the government through the Constitution. And so I think that's important. And like you said, and I say this all the time, that because those rights are inalienable, unalienable, and uninfringible, as I like to say, because they were given to us by God, not from the government. So the government can't take back anything that it doesn't give us. Only God can take those rights away from us. Yeah.
Very key point.
So that's really good. That's really important. Let me read. I know Miller wants to chime in. Let me read a little bit about Sheriff Mack. I didn't really even get a chance to introduce you properly, and I apologize for that. Sheriff Richard Mack is the former sheriff of Graham County, Arizona, and a political activist. He's known for his role in a successful lawsuit brought against the federal government of the United States, which alleged that portions of the Brady Handgun Violent Prevention Act violated the United States Constitution. He's a former lobbyist for Gun Owners of America and a two-time candidate for the United States Congress. Mack is also the founder of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Police Officers, what we were just mentioning, Peace Officers Association, and established the County Sheriff Project movement, both of whom reaffirm what they claim is the constitutional power to refuse to enforce federal laws. I also love the fact that you mentioned, I saw online that you meant that you're a strong advocate of the Rosa Parks brand of civil rights law enforcement protection. And that's awesome. That's so important. Yeah. I'm sorry, Miller. I know you had something you were chiming in.
Yeah, I must start off by saying I appreciate your stance, Sheriff Mack, and all that you're doing. And when you really look at the state of society right now, I think as a whole, we've been so distracted by so many different things that are going on, whether it's this vision of fighting for an American dream that each one of us tends to have in our mind, and what that looks like, and how we ingrain ourselves in making more money and doing more things so that we can get more things. And I think in that process,
pandemic,
right, all of these things. And I think in the process, we overlook these rights that we have. And when we do that, when we get so distracted in trying to accomplish that single goal or a couple of single goals, I think we forget about the other things that are important, the other things that even empower our ability to successfully fulfill the dreams that we have. And I think that's a classic case, because there's so many people who do not know their rights. And even the simple rights. There's so many people, if you think about it, how many people actually go in and they review don't review a document, or they sign up for something and they say sign here and they just sign on it. And you see that's so common. And I'm the type, from I've always been like this. I can remember the very first house I purchased, the attorney and the banker, they were so used to people just signing off on the documents. And I went through every page line by line. It was a very long closing, but I'm like, I am not signing this until I get an understanding. And I think that's what we have lost as a nation. We've giving up our ability to hold those who are in authority accountable. And I love the fact that how you talk about these are elected officials, they're supposed to be serving us. And I commend you again for your service to your community. And when you really look at it, you can look at it from a singular model, from the stance that, okay, if we break it down at the simplest component, if we look at it that each household is composed of the members of the household, and usually you may have a father, hopefully you have a father, a mother in there, and they designate the rule of law in their house. Yeah. You can't, no man can just come into someone's house and just take control and say, I'm going to do, and you're going to do exactly what I want you to do. That just doesn't happen unless there's some illegal activity and you have probable cause. And that should be the same model that goes up. So as you extend out and the house extends to the city level and to the county level, those that sit in those seats that govern those areas are the ones that control what goes on within that house. And then if it's a federal issue, then yeah, that's a bigger house. But I think we have forgotten that police officers are there to serve, but at the same time, I think there are many instances where you have so many police officers who are not doing it necessarily as a calling. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I think this applies throughout society, not just as police officers, but doctors, lawyers, whatever the case may be. But I really believe people have adopted methods of making money to accomplish their dream without accepting the calling of the job that they have. Just as we have police officers who don't necessarily hold up the standard of law as far as protecting and serve, we have doctors who don't do their research or don't care as much about their patients and don't give them the care that they deserve, as well as lawyers who don't do their due diligence in applying the law to their particular clients. So I believe we have to stop as a people and really wake up beyond this pandemic, wake up beyond all that's going on and say, let's take a look at those serious rights that we have. As most of you have said already, those inalienable rights that God has given us. And I love the fact that this constitutional sheriff movement is so based in a belief in God. That's one of the things. I've seen several of your videos with Robert David Steele and Charlie Ward and with other individuals, and that's always coming out of your mouth, just the belief in God and the rights that he's given us. And I think when we can stop and look at the fact that we have these rights and no man can supersede those, I think things will start to change. What do you think about all of that?
I totally believe that, and it's I'm thrilled to be on the same page with both of you, because if you're really searching for the truth regarding principles of liberty, I think we'll end on the same page. Everyone will. It has to be, though, that we're sincerely looking and studying, and not that we're trying to just reinforce our own personal beliefs. None of these are my beliefs. They're all from the Bible, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. They're all from the Declaration of Independence. What the founding fathers said is where I've formed my own personal belief system about liberty. And Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, that our country was founded on based on the notion that we are all created equal, and that the Declaration of Independence says the same thing. And all men are created equal. And then our motto at the CSPOA, Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, is a reminder of all of that, because it says uphold, defend. Uphold is our oath of office. It's the key word, that we will uphold and defend the United States Constitution. And then the next two words, protect and serve. So our whole motto is uphold, defend, protect, serve. And that brings up our obligation to defend the rights of the people and serve them. And the Declaration of Independence makes this very clear. The purpose, and this was what every public official has got to understand, that the purpose of all government is 10 words out of the Declaration of Independence. If we don't understand, as a peace officer, as a sheriff, as a mayor, as a city councilman, county commissioner, the president of the United States, or congressmen or women, if we don't understand the purpose of all government, we're going to get what we're getting today. And there's going to continue to be divisions, because the Declaration of Independence says clearly, quote, that to secure these rights, what rights? Are God-given unalienable rights. That's what government is there for. that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. You know, to me, that sounds religious, and I think it is, that we have a stewardship to protect the people's rights, to defend their God-given rights is really a high calling. And you're going to have bad apples that if they don't understand that principle, they're not going to be there to defend rights. They're going to be there to force people to do this and force people to do that and be too trigger happy and easy. And it cannot be that we are that kind of police officers. We must understand that we are guards of the republic, servants of the people, and the defenders of liberty. How many peace officers in this country have been trained to do that? No police academy trains in that. We do, and we've been doing this training nationwide. We have more I'm doing this with Robert David Steele on this tour. I have Montana sheriffs and peace officers there that I'm going to be training on the 20th and 26th, or 24th and 25th of this month. And then 8, 9, and 10 in July, we're going to be doing it in Texas again, where we just held a huge conference. And let me tell you what Sheriff Scott Williams told me after our conference in right outside Houston. And I'm really glad I came, because while I was at your training, the light came on for me. That's what we want to hear, that the light came on, that they've changed their paradigm view of their own job and say, you know what? I am truly going to be a guard of the Constitution. I'm going to be a constitutional sheriff. And that means I will keep my oath and I will truly defend. And what if, this is the key component here, you guys, we haven't brought this up yet. What if the abusing entity, the oppressive entity, is an agent from the FBI? Or an easier one to say is, what if that abuse is coming from the IRS? Does the sheriff have an obligation to protect his citizens from the crimes, abuse, and oppression of the IRS? Absolutely. It doesn't matter where the abuse or crime comes from. It's not a matter of who does it. It's a matter of what the oppression and abuse is. And obviously, Democrats and Republicans are not going to protect the American people from the crimes of the IRS. So yes, every sheriff in this country has that obligation. And if they're breaking the law, they should be held can be held accountable.
You were breaking up a little bit, but
another thing, absolutely, the sheriff. Oh, I was.
Yeah.
Okay.
You good
well,
now.
Let me reiterate one other thing. Then, the sheriff has the obligation to protect his citizens from rogue, out of control government, and if that means IRS, FBI, or state agencies, none of these mandates should have been forced on people. Shutting down churches, arresting ministers, arresting people for not wearing a mask. There are a lot of sheriffs who defended that, and we just want to make sure that we have many more that are educated and ready to do the same thing.
That's a tremendous point. Those are so important. And you know that it's unfortunate, especially as an African-American male and as a pastor, that this is something that African-American pastors should be talking more of, what you're talking about, especially from a historical standpoint of what we realize what happened in the past, but even now, understanding our rights, understanding our constitutional rights and how important that is. And you know, just a couple of points I wanted to make, but you know, the Constitution is not a document that gives a lot of authority to the government. It's basically a document that limits the authority of government. And I think that it basically sets guidelines to say, government, this is only how far you can go, and you can't supersede those particular guidelines. But what you said is so important when you talk about God and talk about that these rights come from God, which is, to me, it's a kingdom topic. It's a biblical topic, because and that's why Marxism is so dangerous. Not only because Karl Marx, of course, who is he's the person that helped to frame the ideology behind Marxism, who didn't believe in God, and he's
satanic atheist.
Absolutely. He said his job was to dethrone God and to destroy capitalism. And so when you take God out of the equation, then man ultimately becomes the final authority. And so not God. And so now if we put man in the place of God, now man gives you your rights, which means man can take away your rights. But the crazy thing about it is I never understood why people, even in this day, other than ignorance, other than lack of historical perspective, why would people even want to listen to Marxist ideology when Marxism, what it does is it wants to replace our current form of Judeo-Christian Western culture and government, the representative republic, and replace it with a totalitarian system, which men are in charge and they are the ultimate authority. Therefore, they give rights and they can take rights away. Just ask the people in Russia and China and all these other places, And so as much as people, whether it's African Americans who are now, a lot of them are talking about, systemic racism and different things like that. If a person really believes in this really heavy influence of systemic racism, if they adhere to that ideology, they should even be less interested in Marxism, because now that government that you already don't trust and believe that they're being unfair to you, you want to give them more power in your life. And that's just crazy to me. I don't understand why, how people would think that that's okay. But so Marxism is very dangerous. And, and again, I thank you and your stand for inserting God in here in the Bible, because without God's influence, without his sovereign authority and him being the creator of the heavens and the earth, then these individual rights don't make sense. There's no authority that we can base on to say that we have certain inalienable rights, and therefore those rights are suggestions and not rights that can't be trampled upon.
Sheriff Mack.
Well, as the Declaration of Independence says, it says laws of nature or nature's God. And both apply, and I love it. Thank you for that.
I want to go back to something that you were talking about as far as the sheriff having higher authority in that county, even over the FBI and other federal agencies. And if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were telling a story that I heard about one time. And if it is you, I want you to share that with us about how it was the FBI agents that were trying to come against one of the members of your county. And you
it was EPA agents and Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
And they wouldn't let us fix a bridge. And look, the sheriff has nothing to do with fixing bridges. Okay, I wasn't in charge of that. However, the EPA, after we had a flood, the EPA came in and told the county they couldn't fix it until they did their environmental impact studies, and that the Army Corps of Engineers would be actually the ones to fix it if it ever got fixed. Well, 10 months later, they still hadn't done their environmental impact study. And all we were doing is trying to fix a bridge that was already there. We weren't trying to redredge the river or change the environment or anything. But again, it had nothing to do with me yet. And so the county finally voted unanimously to just fix the bridge, because they were sick and tired of the federal government getting in the way, and they wouldn't do their job and wouldn't do what they promised. So then when they did, the Army Corps of Engineers and EPA threatened to arrest the county commissioners, literally threatened to arrest them. And they said they would charge the county $50,000 a day for every day they were in violation, and they would arrest the maintenance workers. Well, if they arrest all of those people, they couldn't, how are they going to be in violation? There's nobody there to do it. They're all in jail. Well, now I get involved. And so I called the Army Corps of Engineers and EPA into my office, and I said, look, I'm the sheriff of this county. I don't know if you guys have heard, but I'm already suing the federal government, because I had already filed that lawsuit about a year before this happened. And I said, the Constitution reigns supreme in this county. And I will tell you right now, none of you have any arrest authority in my county. You don't live here. You're not from here. You have, in fact, EPA, you think you can arrest people? Army Corps of Engineers, you're cops from the feds or something? You're not cops. And don't pretend to come in my county and threaten to arrest people, because if you do, I'm going to arrest you. They left town the next day and never came back. We fixed the bridge. Nobody went to jail and nobody paid a dime in fines. And if you ask me, that's true American constitutional government. Yeah. And if the federal government ever gets in the way, Every sheriff in this country should be doing the same. Protect and defend the people's rights, even if it's against other government. Now, another sheriff that did similar, he did the FDA. And this really ticks me off in this country right now because our government continues to go after Amish farmers who are totally submissive and innocent, and they always bow down to government officials. So they're an easy target and they're easy prey for these money hungry, powerful, lusting thug bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. And many of these Amish farmers have gone to jail just because they don't pasteurize their milk. One I'm in particular that I worked with to try to defend him from the FDA was Sam Gerard, an Amish farmer from Kentucky, who made a salve, a lotion out of chickweed. And I didn't even know what chickweed was, but it's not a controlled substance. It's just a natural herb you grow in your garden. And he went to prison for 6 years. 6 years. Yeah, that's right. He went to prison for 6 years because he didn't get permission from the FDA. And there's this type of government creating criminals. This is government creating criminals, not discovering criminals and then bringing them to justice. I am sick and tired of this government thinking that their bureaucratic regulations supersede the Bill of Rights. And we've got work to do there on both the Democrats and the Republicans in Washington, D.C.
And I think all of this just really spawns the whole effort of looking back local. And I think throughout all of this, this election cycle and everything else that has happened, I think hopefully people are starting to wake up to see the importance of your locality. Because I've been telling people, I say, we have to start locally. We have to start putting people in place. We have to start putting those officials in place who will represent us. I said, in so many instances, we have our state senators and even the senators that we elect that are national, our congressmen who are national. They go on and they forget about the locality. They go and they represent the nation and they do things at a federal level, and they don't always keep the best interests of the people at hand. But they
represent the party.
Exactly. These are people that we have put in place, and we have to hold people accountable to say, hey, we put you in place to go and represent our best interests before the federal government to make sure we get what we need, not you go and you make connections and you make all of the networking opportunities that you have. It is all about us. We're sending you from a local level to represent us. And I think people have forgotten that. People get so caught up in identity politics and they vote along party line, and they're just continually sending the same people. I think it was Einstein that made the statement about insanity doing the same thing and expecting a different result. We have for 50 plus years been putting people, if not longer than that in some instances, putting people in the same place and not holding them accountable to making sure change happens in our area. And this is, I really believe this is at every level of government. And we have that situation, and we have to take the essence of what you're doing and say, okay, I see the sheriffs are doing this. Let's start looking at our school board. Let's start looking at local politicians. Let's start looking at the state level, and let's go up the chain and see, okay, you have been here for X amount of years and there has been no effectuation of change for our community. It's time for you to move. Yeah. We have to enforce our vote and not be swindled or not be convinced to put somebody back in office to give them another chance. So I thank you for putting this example out there, because we need to see that there is power amongst the locals.
If we're going to get freedom back, it's going to happen county by county and state by state. It's not going to happen in Washington, D.C. Forget Washington, D.C. Let's make Washington, D.C. corruption irrelevant at the local level, and let's run our counties according to our oaths of office and the Constitution and the principles of liberty that America was founded upon. I totally agree with what you said. And even then we have to be careful, because it's not just serving the needs of the people necessarily, because I promised to protect their liberty and let them pursue their pursuit of happiness.
Right.
And let them pursue their own health choices. And that's another thing that we should be guaranteed to every individual in this country. forcing somebody to take a vaccination or ruining their life and tell them they can't go anywhere if they don't get a vaccination, can't fly, can't shop, can't go to church, can't. I mean, this thing about you can't go to Disneyland, or if you do, you have to be vaccinated. And if you're not vaccinated, you have to wear a mask, but the other people don't. I mean, where did that come from? But it's still showing that government is not here to take care of you and feed you and put a mask on you and force you to wear a face diaper. Government is here to protect your rights so that you can self-govern and run your own life. And that's a key component on all of this. And I so appreciate being on your show. This is really wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we really appreciate you too, and what you're promoting. We really want to make sure that as many people as possible can have access to your what you're pushing, what you're promoting. You know, what you're promoting.
I would love to come to love to come to Black churches and speak about this. I think we need to, and I totally agree with you. Pastors in the Black community need to really be changing their tune and quit this narrative about systemic racism and tell people that Martin Luther King's legacy was it's been trampled upon by BLM and Antifa and other groups, and I think by some Black ministers. I would love to see this happen, and that is that we remind everyone that Martin Luther King said, the only way we're going to get rid of hate is with love. Violence and hate get more violence and hate. That's Martin Luther King. I totally believe in his peaceful approach, and the approach that we're taking at CSPOA. And by the way, everybody can become a member of the CSPOA. We invite all of you to join, everybody on your program. But this is the key. Martin Luther King said, the only way to get rid of hate and violence is with love. You can't do it with hate. And there's been too many of our leaders in this country promoting hate. And I absolutely denounce what they're doing. And this whole thing about convincing all of us that there's systemic racism makes me afraid to go talk to a Black person, because they're going to think I'm a racist. And so I still do it. And I was in Burbank just a couple of days ago, and I was doing an early morning walk, and there was a Black man standing on the sidewalk. And I wanted to ask him, if I went into a store, do I still have to wear a mask? I thought he would know. He's local. He was extremely friendly. And we stood and talked for a while. That's how we should be. We shouldn't be promoting this agenda of hate and racism. Why? And then I went to a movie the other night with my wife, and a Black man and his wife opened the door for us. And I go, wow, I thought we were supposed to be enemies. I'm glad to know we're not. We're not enemies. We're Americans. Right. We all want the same thing. We want our children to be happy and healthy and free. Right. And freedom is the key commodity of all of this. And every facet of government, Mr. Biden, every facet of government should be trying to do one thing: unify us within the principles of freedom that are detailed in the Bill of Rights. We should be promoting the liberty in the Bill of Rights, not destroying them. And I say the rights detailed in the Bill of Rights belong to every single American. I don't care what color you are, what religion you are, what background you are, who your daddy was. I don't care. Those rights belong to everyone, and I'll give my life to fight for those for everyone. No exemptions, no exceptions, no crisis, no pandemic, no excuses. We defend liberty for all.
And you know, it's so important. This pandemic really brought these topics up to the front, to the forefront. And you know, it's unfortunate, but we saw this shift with how we've been socially engineered, especially, and we've made everything a political issue instead of a freedom and constitutional issue. And you know what I've said over and over again over the last year is, I'm not telling people whether they should wear a mask or shouldn't wear a mask. I'm not telling the person whether they should get vaccine or not. What I'm saying is that your constitutional right is the right to choose whatever you like to do, or however you feel comfortable. You should be able to make that choice without the government coming in and trying to be heavy-handed and forcing you to do something. You know, it doesn't make sense for the government to force me as a healthy individual to quarantine, which is something that is for people that are sick. And, you know, from a historical perspective, I think it's so important, especially in our community, as we do know for sure that there are pockets of police officers that are overreaching. You know, they have this mindset of like a martial law type of thing. Like, I'm in charge. When I walk in the room, everybody's under my authority, which that's not how it should be. I think that it's so important for us, especially in our communities or communities where we have issues, that we need to really have this connection with the sheriffs and the local local law enforcement in a way that we are working together to build a stronger community where my children can be safe. They can live a life and make choices for their future. I don't have to worry about, someone coming and trying to, be heavy-handed with me or my children. And as we work together, I think we have some great opportunities. When the police officer and you have a connection, and here's part of the problem I see, when we have allowed identity politics to come in, which a lot of people now that are now holding to the liberal point of view. So the things that we're talking about here seem alien to a lot of them, even though this is the foundation of this nation. But, when I was growing up, we had strong community and strong families. So for instance, if I was standing on the corner and I was doing something I wasn't supposed to, Mr. Jones, Mr. Smith, whoever would come and say, get off this corner and go home, boy, you know better than that. And then they'd call my parents and then problem solved. But now you have broken families and broken communities. So that boy is standing on the corner doing something he's not supposed to, whether it's selling drugs. And I was in law enforcement many years ago. And, the guy standing on the corner, he's selling drugs. We all know what he's doing. Now the neighbors are afraid to go and talk to him or confront him. The police officers come and it's a hostile situation. And now a lot of times it doesn't turn out in a good way. And so it's so important for us to have that connection with local law enforcement as we strengthen our communities and strengthen our families, because you should be looked at as my friend, or my ally, Absolutely. I should say, as opposed to the guy that whenever they show up, you're like, what's going to happen now? It shouldn't be that way. One of the things that happened.
We want the community to have a relationship with your sheriff and local police. Get to know them, and they should be out walking and getting to know them, and they should be going to churches, and your pastor should be inviting the sheriff to come and talk at church and answer questions from the people and get a relationship. And that's what we say at the CSPOA. This is a relationship between the sheriffs and peace officers and the people. And it has to be that we're together like that, or this isn't going to work.
It's not going to work.
The people have to be involved.
I'll tell you, I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Chief Carter, who is the chief of police here, is a great guy. And some of the situations that happened last year were diffused in Harrisburg because he's from Harrisburg. He graduated from the high school here. He's a local person. And I would love for you guys to connect. And I love to
Can you read that?
Sheriff's Office, Chester County.
Yep, that's right near you.
Yes, yep.
That's
right down the road.
Right outside Harrisburg. Yeah.
But it's tremendous. So we don't have some of those issues in Harrisburg. But I tell you, one of the things, I live out in a township. One of the things that bothers me or has bothered me, and I think that this conversation is really helping me to process it. Sometimes nowadays, it seems like the police will, like, for instance, the police officer, ran my tag and pulled me over. So he was behind me. I didn't do anything, but he ran my license plate. And I'm thinking, to me, it seems like an infringement on the rights. If I'm just driving down the street and I'm not doing anything, no busted taillights.
What did he say he pulled you over for?
Well, he pulled me over because he asked me something about my registration. And so I had purchased a car, and for whatever reason, PennDOT put the wrong description on it. It was the license plate, the VIN number was everything right, but he pulled me over. But what I was asking him was, well, why were you running my tags in the first place? I'm driving down the street. I wasn't breaking any laws, wasn't speeding. To me, that seems like an imposition of rights. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it is. It was a fishing expedition, and it doesn't look very well that a black man's driving a car and then the cop wants to run the plate for some reason. If he had no reason to run the plate, if he had no reasonable suspicion to run the plate, then he had no reason to stop you. And so yeah, I don't go for that at all. And look, he might not be a real bad guy, but let me tell you this right now. I don't approve of that, and I train my deputies not to do stuff like that. And in fact, I train my deputies not to write people a ticket for not having a seatbelt on. That's an individual choice. That's up to the person to wear a seatbelt. We can persuade them and hope that they'll do the right thing, and we can help them find child restraint seats for their children. There were some places that were offering them for free to people back in those days when I was sheriff. Of course, that's the mid 90s. But let me tell you this honestly, folks, good cops in this country outnumber the bad cops, and good cops don't like bad cops. We don't like them. And we've just got to get rid of this thing called the blue line and the blue line of silence and the code of silence. If a cop next to you is doing something wrong, correct them right then and there. We saw this with George Floyd. The cops that watch and didn't do anything are being charged also.
Yeah.
And so be it. But if you're going to stand there and watch a cop do something wrong, I mean, the citizens were trying to stop the cops, and still the cops stood there, And so I'm sorry. We need to be honest and intelligent and sensitive enough when we've gone too far. And if a cop is going too far next to you, stop it. Okay. And let's be part of the solution there too.
One thing that has been resonating, one single word has been liberty. And my wife and I, we have this conversation at times. I think some people get liberty and freedom confused, because there's so many instances where we have freedom, and you take it from our standpoint as African Americans, we didn't have freedom for a while in this country. And then we gained our freedom, and it became law that slavery was illegal, but there was still our liberties that were being infringed upon. And, we've come a long way from the civil rights days and Jim Crow days and all those different things. But I think as a whole, we have to understand that, yes, even though everyone has freedom, white, black, Asian, everybody has freedom. But the issue sometimes is that our liberties are not fought for. And I know that's the main thing that we've been talking about, but I wanted to make that distinction, because people think freedom and liberty, yes, they should go hand in hand. If I am free, I should have the liberty to exercise my freedoms. My freedom gives me the right to vote. My freedom gives me the right to drive, as Joe said, to drive around and not do anything illegal without being pulled over for a fishing expedition.
Yep.
Allow me the ability to operate in my liberty, to pursue life and pursue it happily for my family and everything that's around me. And so I think our listeners, we have to remember that this is a big battle for our liberties, our ability to be able to do the God-given things that were given to us. And until we can drive that home, until people realize that, yes, even though we are free, we still have to fight for our liberty. And sometimes it's a daily fight. And until we get people in power or in elected positions who understand our liberties, and we hold them accountable for our liberties, it's going to be, we're going to continue seeing some of the same things. So we definitely have to take this moment, even though it started with this bad whole pandemic thing in 2020, but we have to seize this moment and wake up and say, let's reclaim our liberties over everything that belongs to us.
Yeah. And, what you said is so key. And that's what kind of disturbed me over this past year, where it didn't seem like enough people were alarmed at our liberties being infringed upon. When I start to hear the government saying, we're going to shut down, or you can't do this, or, they were threatening to fine people, and some churches that even got fined, that Pastor Rodney Howard Brown down in Florida got arrested, actually. And
by
I don't
Sheriff
think
Cronister. Sheriff Cronister. Sheriff Cronister is on my blacklist. He needs to be trained. And
yeah, I agree. And it's unfortunate that not as many people, I think, were alarmed.
I've been mad at him for so long.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, and what people don't fail to realize historically, that when governments give up their, when people give up their rights to government, very rarely do governments just turn around and give their rights back. And so we have to protect them. We have to defend them as much as possible. And without those things, you know, we're in deep trouble. But Sheriff Mack, can you tell everybody, just give them all your background? I mean, not your background, but tell them about your association, how they can find out more about what you're doing, and where you're gonna be, and hopefully you'll be in Pennsylvania soon, so we can have you come and have a conversation here with you in person.
Well, I would love that. In fact, I can't remember when we're in Pennsylvania, but I think it's a few weeks out. We're going to be at Rapid City, Mount Rushmore on July 4th. We want to invite everybody to come to that. It's going to be an amazing spiritual, patriotic service at the foot of Mount Rushmore. But if you want to support what we're doing, if you want to become a member, we'd love to have all of you members of our posse. Sign up for our posse. It's very inexpensive, $11 a month, $99 a year. But we want to make this a people movement for liberty. And so everybody's welcome to be part of this. And let's change America county by county and state by state, and take back our liberty county by county, sheriff by sheriff, and one state at a time. We believe in that. And you can see more about us and order my books and become a part of this great movement. Understand and read my Supreme Court decision. It's vital. It's a very important decision. And you can get all of that at CSPOA.org, Constitutional Sheriffs Peace Officers Association, CSPOA.org.
Outstanding. I know your time is very valuable. Miller, did you have anything else before we let the sheriff go?
Yeah, I've got to get.
I just really appreciate you and what you're doing and the example that you're setting, because you've come out of position of a sheriff, and you're not like an outsider to the sheriff regime doing this, but you are an insider that has made a great impact. And I pray God's blessing upon you, and that you continue doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I want to close this out with one of the quotes that I saw here from you. Again, for all those who are listening, we've been talking with Sheriff Richard Mack, and Sheriff Mack is one of the founders of this great organization, the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. And the quote that I found here that was so tremendous, Sheriff Richard Mack says, "Defending liberty is the ultimate duty of government." And I think that is so important for us to understand, that the government is not supposed to be the one controlling our lives. It's not supposed to raise our children. It's not supposed to do all those type of things. The government's job is simply to defend our liberties and provide an opportunity for each and every one of us to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. And so, again, Amen. Thank you very much, Sheriff Mack, and hopefully we'll have some more conversations in the near future. And till next time, you be safe for you and your family, and blessings to all those who have been watching this podcast. We'll be back with more content, so stay tuned to this channel. Peace and blessings. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sheriff Mack.
Thank you.